Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. So we prepare. I mean, that's probably why you're watching this channel right now, right? And we try to think of all the things that we need, the things that we need to do, and that's what preparedness is, right? Is getting ready for. Well, what happens when everything just kind of crashes down or everything gets restricted to where you just can't get the stuff that you need, the things that you want, the things that you're used to? Are you capable of living pretty simple and without stuff? And that's one of the big ideas and stuff that I have really pushed on this channel since the beginning, is learning to do things in a simple way so that you just don't need as much stuff. You know, can you survive without it and not, you know, can I collect enough stuff so that I can survive with it? And I want to talk about that today because with all the craziness going on, we're seeing it happen in Europe. A lot of countries are starting to, another 15-day flatten the curve kind of thing where they're going to, do a hard lockdown, or flipping the breaker, I think is what they said in the United Kingdom is what they're going to do after the Christmas holiday, which is just in a few days. And there seems to be a building pressure here in the United States, more hype about, the new variant, and the poll numbers aren't looking good for the president. People are not really satisfied with how he's handled this thus far, and I have a feeling that they're going to interpret that meaning that we need to lock it down and, make people suffer because they didn't obey us. Anyways, we'll talk about all of that stuff and more here in just a minute. I wanted to show you a book that someone sent me a week or two ago. I mentioned it over on Rumble last week during my, jail sentence from YouTube. But anyways, I think it's a pretty good book. It's a good concept, good idea, and it's learning to use Morse code. I get it. It's not an exciting subject, but this is a workbook. Not just a book that you read. It's a workbook. It's got, it's written kind of on I think more of a middle school level, which makes it easy for all of us to learn. I've been a ham operator for almost 2 decades, so learning Morse code isn't quite the top of my list because I know it, but it's interesting that just before this was sent to me, my 13-year-old son came to me and asked about learning how to do Morse code because he's been reading some of my Hardy Boys books. And then a viewer sent this to me. Rachel Mintz is the author, and she sent it to me and asked if I would review the book. So I'm definitely going to have my son start working on this because it's a good beginner's guide to learning how to use Morse code. If you're interested in this book, there is an Amazon link down in the description below. I think it's around $14 or $15, something like that. But I could see, especially for you homeschoolers, I could see, because that's what we are as homeschoolers, and I could see this being a pretty cool book to add to your curriculum to teach your kids something that's kind of a dying thing. Not too many people use it anymore. They don't even require to learn it to get your ham radio license anymore. But I still think it's an important skill to have, especially if things got really bad and we had to do more ham radio type communication. Learning how to use Morse code, it still has its place. I get it. I know all you ham users are like, but they got computers to do all that for you now. You don't have to actually know how to use. It's still a good idea. I think it's still good to know, and this is a good way for you to learn it. Anyways, all right. So it looks like to me, and I could be wrong on this, that we're going to start seeing some more heavy-handed restrictions. I mean, the language coming out of the White House is pretty plain and clear. If some of you haven't seen the memo, and I believe there's a video of the NIH something director, maybe spokesperson, something, basically verbatim saying this. But anyways, there's a press release from the White House saying that for all you good obedient people, the good obedient children that's listened to us, everything we're gonna do our very best to make sure that everything is just fine and dandy for you guys. For all of you that's been bad children and haven't listened to us and haven't done what the good doctors have told you to do, well, it's going to be a really bad dark winter for you. Lots of death, illnesses, family members. You're just all going. You're gonna suffer. You're gonna suffer badly, and you're gonna cause the hospitals to overwhelm because it's all your fault. It's a really nice unifying message from a president that's claimed to be, this nonpartisan unifier. It really is. Anyways, when you take that, add it to, the poll numbers, his poll numbers are horrible right now. And, you and I would see that as like, well, people are unhappy that he's, how he's handled this health crisis, that maybe they need to back off. But I don't think that's how they're going to interpret that. They're going to interpret that as like, people want something done. We need to get busy and get doing it, because all of our friends, our liberal friends in Europe and stuff, that's what they're doing. Germany, Netherlands, United Kingdom, all these other countries are, having these passport thingies and locking people down and making all these mandates and restrictions and fines if you don't obey and don't get this. And, they're pretty heavy-handed over there in Europe. Same with Australia. And I have no doubt that this current administration is going to want to do that too, and I think they're just slowly trying to ease into it. I think it was Boston, or maybe the whole state of Massachusetts. I could be wrong. I've been busy. They're doing basically the same thing as New York. The passport is now mandatory to go into businesses and do all that kind of stuff. So it's spreading here in the United States. That, I think, is the goal. I think that's what they want. There's been every indication of that since the beginning of this, regardless of what they say, because as you all know, the words that come out of their mouths don't actually reflect the actual actions that they do. So remember that every time you hear one of them say, oh, we're not going to mandate, we're not going to do this. Well, we are, but we're not. So where does that leave us? Well, we prepare, yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's the stuff that I tell you all the time. But what I want to get to today, I know this has taken forever to get to it. What do you do when you just don't have it? What do you do when you can't get the stuff because the lockdowns or the mandates or whatever it is you want to call it have happened and you just can't go get the stuff? You've made a decision. You're not crossing that line. And you're gonna survive without it, right? Well, that may be a position that a lot of you find yourself in very soon. I have talked about it repeatedly over the last year or two, that preparedness in this time period of our lives and what's going on in the world isn't necessarily just because there could be some apocalypse and, every grocery store on the planet is gone tomorrow, or the U.S. dollar collapses, or the grid goes down, or the supply chain completely, the bottom falls out, or whatever, to where the stuff just isn't there. That's not the only reason to prepare. As we have seen building, another reason to prepare is not that it's not there, it's that it's not available to you, that you don't have access to it. I mean, the store shelves are filled. There's all kinds of stuff. You can go to the hospital and get medical care. You can go get your car worked on. You can go to the farm store. You can go to Walmart and the grocery store and everywhere else, as long as you have your papers, please. And if you don't get to go to and do those kind of things. You don't get that kind of stuff. And I'm sure all kinds of other penalties being put on you. We're seeing fines, actually monthly fines being put on people in Europe. We're seeing people that are on Social Security and disability, or what their version of Social Security and disability in Europe, retirement plans and stuff. We're seeing that being deducted, like the fine being deducted out of that monthly. We're seeing people here in the United States, their health insurance costs going up substantially because they're not getting it. So with everything that we've seen happen here in the United States and abroad, I don't think we're that far away from, no, you can't go to the grocery store anymore because you don't have this, right? So we have to prepare ourselves for that also. Every type of scenario offers something different that we need to look at and prepare. The stuff exists. You just don't have access to it. And so there are ways to prepare. Sure, you can stock up. There's other ways, having certain trusted people that have the paperwork that can go get it. There's things like that. But in the end, I believe one of your best options is to learn how to do without. Prepping has been going on forever. And that's what Joseph in Egypt, when he was the second in command under Pharaoh, that's what they were doing. Preparedness isn't something new, though maybe the word prepping is, or to be a prepper, maybe that's all new within the last decade or two. But the concept is not new. But it wasn't always to stock and stack as much stuff as you can possibly purchase and hope that it lasts long enough. I mean, you usually, most people had, 6 months to a year worth of most things in their homes. But it wasn't like they stacked, an eternity's worth of food, because it's not possible. It's not capable of doing that. And so what you need to be focusing on and reevaluating in your life, in your preparedness plan, is how much of what you use and how much of what you do and things in your life can you just do without? Are you set up in a way, and I'm just giving an example. You have a washer and a dryer. Well, what if you can't get laundry detergent for it? What if you don't have access to the water to run it or the electricity to run it? Can you do without your washer and dryer? Do you have a backup plan? Do you have a way to somehow produce your own soaps, some type of cleaning? If not, do you have a way to produce something that you can maybe barter? Do you know someone that can do that? Making soap is not hard as long as you have the stuff to make it, and there are old-fashioned ways to make lye soap that you can get that stuff from usually the world around you, fat from animals and ashes from wood, wood ash. I mean, that's the two basic ingredients you can make lye soap. It's not fancy, it doesn't smell great, but it works. There are certain plants that you can use as a soap alternative. So that's just one example. I'm not advocating, and I haven't always advocated everyone to just be super ultra primitive. What I've told people is have the capability of being primitive, have a capability of of being simple, lifestyle, of being super self-sufficient. If you go back and you look at our ancestors 100, 150, 200 years ago here in the United States, the early pioneers and early homesteaders, they had very, very, very little. Most of the stuff that they bought at a store, at like a general store and stuff, were really luxury items. Sugar, coffee beans, things that they didn't absolutely have to have. They got those things at the store to make their life comfortable, to make it a little bit more enjoyable. But what they needed to survive, to live every day, they found it around them. They had a few simple tools, and then everything else they made out of what was around them. And that's how they made it work. Look at some of these early homesteaders and their sod houses and stuff. I mean, they didn't even have lumber to build a home. They were using literally the sod dirt to build their houses, until they could afford or even have access to lumber. These people, our ancestors, the early Americans, they were tough, and they did not give up. They did not back down. They didn't come across the United States. They didn't cross that Mississippi and head west with this idea that if it didn't work, that there was going to be someone there to take care of them. They didn't have this idea that if they couldn't make a living, the government would at least send them a little check or some food stamps, or pay for their medical bills, or they're not going to necessarily be homeless because there's all kinds of aid and different types of welfare programs to take care of them. Or if it doesn't work out, I have a parents or relatives or someone that can always send me a monthly check and kind of make things work. That wasn't the case. They either survived or they died. Simple. Survived or died. They were tough. I am an early American history buff, and I have read countless books and stories of accounts of early Americans, some of the ones that are popular and some very obscure. And it's always interesting and exciting to see how these people, how they survived in situations that most modern Americans just could not even fathom. And what it tells me is that we are capable of way much more than what we think. And the only thing, these people that are running the show right now, and I'm not talking about just in Washington, D.C., I am talking about these elites that are running the world, okay? The only thing that they have over us is that they have made the world, they've made most people believe that we need them, that we need them, that we need their services, that we need their welfare, that we need their infrastructure, that we need their comforts and their conveniences. That's the one thing that they've done extremely successful in the last 150 years, is that they have convinced people that we need them. And that's just not true at all. We don't need them. We don't need them, okay? I assure you that the people that in the county that I live in a big county as far as land-wise, but real small county when the population. It's a very, very rural county. I assure you the people in this county, regardless of what they believe, could probably come up with a better way to take care of things here in this county. I mean, I'm sure they could. Is that going to fix everything? Of course not. I get it. I'm not going to get into argument on semantics. The point is that we don't need them, even though they have convinced us that we do. And so we have to sever that umbilical cord. Even folks like you and I and preppers and patriotic, independent-minded people, there's still an umbilical cord there connected in so many ways. Again, I'm not saying that we should live like people did in 1805. I'm saying that we should have the capability, if we needed to, of surviving like people did in the 1800s. I have modern conveniences here at this house. I mean, we have a washer and a dryer. I have an air conditioner. We have modern things for the most part. Some things we don't because we just don't want it. But for the most part, we have modern things. But we're capable of living without them. It's not as cushy and comfortable, but we can survive without them. We can survive without all the fancy little foods that we normally get. If we had to live off this land, we have enough done so far, and it's far, far from perfect. Far from perfect. But we know that we have enough so far that we could actually survive. It may be tough. It may not be comfortable. We may be eating things we don't really like or that aren't the best tasting. But we could survive. And that's really, that's to me, the greatest way to end this cycle, is we have to show them that they're not needed. And we have to show them on a large enough scale. And it doesn't take a large scale. I mean, if you go back to the Revolutionary War, it was like, 13% of the people rebelled and fought against the British Empire. So it's not like it takes a lot. We just have to show them that they're not needed in our lives. And I think that we can actually, really make some change, passively resist. Does it need to become more than passive when it comes to resistance? Maybe someday. But the first step in that is that you have to get to a place where you're not dependent upon their system. You can protest and march and actually completely outright, rebel against them. But if you're still dependent upon their system to keep you comfortable and alive, then you're not going to win. You've got to get to a place that you can, and a lot of it's mental. It really is. A lot of it's mental. It's not the tools that they had. It's our ancestors. It wasn't the things that they had that made them successful and survive. It was right up here is what they had. That's how they survived. And we've got to get to that place because we're seeing a movement moving pretty rapidly all over the world and starting here in America, that some of us may have to make a decision whether to have those needed things in our life to survive or to have freedom. And you need to be ready for that, folks. All right. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.